We continue to hear about the terrible aftermath of the Waukesha massacre. So this guy, Darrell Brooks, a career criminal with a long rap sheet. In fact, if you review his criminal record, it's 50 pages long. This is a guy accused of rape, domestic violence, a whole series of crimes, one on top of the other, including, by the way, using his car to try to run over. In fact, he did run over his girlfriend. Lovely man. So this guy, Darrell Brooks, massacred these people intentionally, not accidentally. Initially, you notice that CNN, as well as other outlets, tried to portray this as, this is a crash, as if this was some kind of accident. No, it's not an accident. It was a deliberate act. And then they tried to say the car did it. Remember, Washington Post, an SUV made its way. CNN, it was a car that did it, as if they're going to now indict the car. So this is Waukesha, 6 people dead, and most poignantly and most recently, this kid, 8-year-old, Jackson Sparks. He was in critical condition after the attack, and he died. And over 60 people injured. Now, I want to talk about why the media has been so eager to distort this, and now that they can't really distort it, to move on from it. It shows you the nature of news, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But it's not just because of the fact that Darrell Brooks is black. That is a big factor. In fact, think about it. If Darrell Brooks had been white, this would have been all about white supremacy. This would be all about the white guy who crashed. And look, this is the kind of fanaticism that the left has been warning against. But the moment you have a black perpetrator, a chill runs through the liberal community and the media. It's like, oh, we can't touch this one. This is a little radioactive. And so that's fact number one. Inconvenient fact number one. Inconvenient fact number two is that Darrell Brooks is a leftist with pro-BLM and anti-white views. This is all over his social media. Andy Ngo and others have been reporting on it, and the left is furious. What does this have to do with anything? Well, why are you bringing this up? How do we know that he did this because he's a BLM guy? Well, let's say he was a white guy and he was a member of the Proud Boys. Don't you think that this would be splashed over the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post, be on CBS News? Of course. Even though no connection has been established between the motive, between his views, and why he did it. Look at the Rittenhouse case. Was there a single shred of evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse was somehow a white supremacist? He had white supremacist views? No, that didn't stop the left from going on and on about it. And the trial showed that there was no evidence of it whatsoever, not just in the Rittenhouse case, also look at the Derek Chauvin case. After hearing for almost a year about the fact that the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, this was a racial case, this man was a racist. No evidence of racism was even alleged in the trial. It never came up. And so, in a sense, the public narrative or the media narrative completely divorced from what's happening in the classroom. Number 3, this was a guy who was let out by a Soros DA. This is the part the left really wants to hide. And they want to hide it because it shows that this massacre wasn't just done by Brooks. It was done by Brooks, yes, but enabled by this guy named John Chisholm, a Soros-funded DA, a left-winger, the head of something called the Milwaukee Experiment. What's the experiment? The opposite of incarceration. Chisholm calls it decarceration. And his justification for decarceration is he wants to, quote, eliminate racial disparities in the jail system. So what he means by racial disparities is that proportionately there are more blacks in prison for violent crimes than there are whites. Now, that could be because more blacks and whites commit violent crimes proportionally. But Chisholm doesn't care. His point is we got to have kind of the same proportion. So he wants equity. This is critical race studies as applied to jurisprudence. And he's been praised for it. In fact, Jeffrey Toobin wrote a long article in the New Yorker a few years ago, basically gushing about this guy. So this guy, John Chisholm, and his office is responsible for letting this guy, Darrell Brooks, out on $1,000, think about it, $1,000 bail, to let a career criminal with a massively long rap sheet back out on the street. Now, the other factor is the weapon. The left is got to face the fact that this is a guy without a AR-15. So he commits the mayhem with a car. His car was a red Ford Escape. And boom, the car was the deadly weapon. So you don't need an AR-15 to kill a whole bunch of people. This is another inconvenient fact. The left wants to make it all about the gun. Of course, you remember in Rittenhouse, he had an AR-15, he carried it across state lines. Well, first of all, he didn't carry it across state lines. And second of all, the gun was not illegal. So that ended up being a kind of, that went poof in the courtroom. And then the final factor that can be missed, which is his target. His target was a Christmas parade. Now, the left is not too enthusiastic about Christmas, and people may say, well, Dinesh, why are you bringing that up? What does that have to do with it? He would have driven through any parade. Well, he might have driven through any parade, but here's my point. What if he had driven through an LGBTQ parade? Well, I bet you we'd be getting long profiles of every LGBTQ casualty. We'd be getting all kinds of tearful, people on TV like, oh, this is horrible, and so on. But since it's a Christmas parade, can you even name the victims? Have you seen anything about them? Have you ever heard the life stories of any of them told in your local newspaper or in a national publication or on the news? No. It's almost as if they don't exist. They've been sort of moved off stage. And so what I'm getting from all this is that the media is not about covering what's happening or what's important. Waukesha is important. More people died in Waukesha than died in Charlottesville and January 6th combined. Think about that. So if you're going on the basis of casualties or going on the basis of which crime is more horrific in terms of its toll on human life, well, we have the answer to that. I think we have to think of the media here as kind of an illusionist on a stage. What does an illusionist do? He doesn't show you what's there. He shows you what he wants you to see. His goal is to create a sort of hypnosis in which you are taken in by the illusion. You begin to confuse the illusion for reality. The media is a kind of house of mirrors, except these aren't real mirrors. They aren't showing you things directly. They're not showing you what's there. They're refracting mirrors, which means that they give you a distorted, mutilated, and ideologically driven picture of reality.